A security researcher just got permanently banned from GitHub, and the reason has the entire cybersecurity world furious. Not because they hacked anything, not because they stole data, but because they published proof that Windows has dangerous, unpatched security holes that Microsoft hasn't fixed. And now the platform that hosts most of the world's open source code has shut them out entirely. This story broke just 3 days ago, and it's already one of the most controversial moves Microsoft has made in years. Think about what's happening here. Someone whose entire job is to find security vulnerabilities in software to protect you and me from hackers, posted evidence of those vulnerabilities publicly. And instead of Microsoft rushing to fix the problem, they ban the person who exposed it. That's a bit like a food safety inspector finding mold in a restaurant's kitchen, publishing the findings online, and then the health department revokes the inspector's license for embarrassing the restaurant. The researcher at the center of this posted what are called zero-day exploits. These are attack tools that target security flaws Microsoft hasn't patched yet. The word zero-day means the company has had 0 days to fix it. Every Windows user in the world, and that's roughly 1.4 billion people, is potentially exposed. But this ban isn't just a legal dispute. It's a battle over who controls the truth about software security. And here's where it gets interesting. The researcher says Microsoft ruined their life first. To understand why this ban hit so hard, you need to know a bit about who this researcher is and what the security community actually looks like from the inside. Cybersecurity researchers occupy a strange space in the tech world. They are essentially professional lockpickers. Companies like Microsoft, Google, and Apple actually rely on independent researchers to find holes in their software before criminals do. When a researcher finds a flaw, the accepted practice is called responsible disclosure. You quietly tell the company, give them time to fix it, usually around 90 days, and then you can publish your findings publicly to warn users and claim credit for the discovery. This system works because both sides have incentives. Researchers get recognition and sometimes financial rewards, called bug bounties. Companies get to patch problems before the public knows how bad things got. It's a fragile but functional handshake that has kept a lot of people safe for decades. Now here's where the friction comes in. When that handshake breaks down, when a company ignores a reported flaw, denies there's a problem, or worse, retaliates against the researcher, some researchers go public. It's a calculated act of pressure. Post the exploit details publicly, and suddenly Microsoft has a very public, very embarrassing reason to fix things fast. The researcher in this story claims they reported vulnerabilities to Microsoft, that the process went badly wrong, and that Microsoft's response damaged their professional reputation and livelihood so severely they felt they had no choice but to go nuclear. And that's just the beginning of how messy this gets. Let's slow down and really understand what a zero-day exploit actually is, because this is the technical heart of the whole story, and most news coverage breezes right past it. Every piece of software, Windows, your banking app, your browser, is written by humans, which means it contains mistakes. Some of those mistakes are minor bugs that crash your app. Others are security vulnerabilities, flaws that an attacker can exploit to take control of your computer, steal your files, or install malware without you knowing anything happened. When one of those security flaws is discovered and the software company doesn't know about it yet, it's called a zero-day vulnerability, 0 days of warning. The company has had 0 days to patch it, and if that flaw is actively being used by hackers in the wild, it becomes one of the most dangerous things in cybersecurity. Now a zero-day exploit is the actual tool, the code, the technique, the specific attack method that uses that flaw to cause harm. Think of the vulnerability as an unlocked backdoor in a building, and the exploit as the detailed instructions for how to walk through it, disable the alarm, and empty the safe. When the researcher in this story published zero-day exploits on GitHub, which is essentially the world's largest public code library, owned by Microsoft, they were uploading those detailed instructions for anyone to read, download, and use. Microsoft says that's dangerous and irresponsible. The researcher says Microsoft left the back door unlocked on purpose for too long. The part most people overlook entirely is that both things can be true at the same time. So what exactly did the researcher post, and how did Microsoft react? Let's walk through what we know happened based on the reporting that came out this week. The researcher posted working zero-day exploit code targeting Windows systems on their GitHub account. These weren't theoretical security papers or vague write-ups about flaws. These were functional tools, code, that could actually be run to exploit the vulnerabilities they described. The kind of thing a penetration tester might use to demonstrate a flaw in a controlled environment, but also the kind of thing a cybercriminal could pick up and weaponize within hours. For context, a single critical Windows zero-day can sell on underground markets for anywhere from $100,000 to over $500,000, depending on how reliably it works and what systems it targets. That's how valuable these things are in the wrong hands. Microsoft, through its GitHub platform, moved quickly. The account was banned, the repositories were taken down, and GitHub cited violations of its acceptable use policies, specifically around posting malicious code that could harm users. But here's what the researcher and supporting security experts are pointing out loudly. GitHub hosts thousands of repositories containing exploit frameworks, penetration testing tools, and vulnerability proofs of concept. Projects like Metasploit, which is one of the most widely used hacking frameworks in professional security testing, live right there on GitHub. The line between legitimate security research and malicious code is genuinely blurry, and critics say Microsoft drew it in an unusual place this time. Here's the twist nobody expected: the researcher isn't staying quiet. At the core of this controversy is a genuine philosophical debate that the security industry has been having for decades, and it's worth laying out both sides clearly because neither is obviously wrong. On one side you have responsible disclosure, the approach most large companies strongly prefer. You find a flaw, you tell the company privately, you give them time to fix it, and then maybe you publish a write-up later. The logic is simple. If you broadcast a vulnerability before there's a patch, you're handing criminals a loaded weapon. Microsoft, Apple, Google, they all advocate loudly for this model and run formal programs to reward researchers who follow it. On the other side, you have full disclosure, sometimes called going full public, where a researcher publishes everything immediately or after a short deadline, whether or not the company has fixed the problem. The logic here is also compelling. Companies sometimes ignore vulnerabilities for years if there's no public pressure. Cisco sat on a critical router vulnerability for over 300 days before a researcher went public and forced a patch. Without that pressure, millions of devices stay vulnerable forever. The tension between these two approaches is essentially trust. Responsible disclosure requires you to trust that the company will actually fix the problem in good faith. Full disclosure says that trust has to be earned, not assumed. The researcher in this case appears to be arguing they tried responsible disclosure, it failed them catastrophically, and full public release was the only remaining tool they had. This is where it gets complicated, because GitHub is both a neutral platform and a Microsoft product. Here's why this ban is bigger than just one researcher and one dispute. The ripple effects through the security community are already being felt, and they are significant. GitHub is not a neutral third party. Microsoft acquired GitHub back in 2018 for $7,500,000, $5 billion, and it now hosts over 100 million developers and researchers globally. It is the dominant platform for sharing code, security tools, and research. When Microsoft bans someone from GitHub, it doesn't just remove their account. It effectively cuts them off from the professional infrastructure of modern software development. Experts quoted in the Tom's Hardware reporting are calling the ban vindictive, a word with serious implications. If a major platform can silence security researchers who embarrass it, researchers will start self-censoring. They'll think twice before publishing findings that reflect badly on Microsoft. And that's dangerous for everyone, because the security research community depends on open, fearless disclosure to keep the internet safe. There's also a chilling precedent here. Microsoft is simultaneously the company being exposed and the company that controls the platform used to expose it. That's a structural conflict of interest that would make any media lawyer uncomfortable. Imagine if a pharmaceutical company owned the only scientific journal in the world that published drug safety studies. The researcher has reportedly promised further retaliation, which likely means more exploit releases, potentially targeting Microsoft systems specifically. So by banning the researcher, Microsoft may have escalated a controlled disclosure situation into an ongoing public one. But here's what most coverage gets wrong. This isn't just about Microsoft. Regardless of how this dispute between Microsoft and the researcher resolves, the zero-day vulnerabilities themselves are real. And right now, every Windows user should take a few concrete steps to reduce their exposure. Let me walk you through the practical things that actually make a difference. First, and most critically, enable automatic Windows updates if you haven't already. When Microsoft releases a patch for a vulnerability, automatic updates mean you get it within hours rather than weeks. Go to your Windows settings, search for Windows Update, and make sure automatic updates are switched on. This single step protects you against the vast majority of known vulnerabilities the moment Microsoft fixes them. Second, use a modern browser and keep it updated. Many zero-day exploits target the browser as the entry point into a system. You visit a crafted web page, and the attack begins. Chrome, Firefox, and Edge all push security updates aggressively and automatically. Third, be skeptical of unexpected files, links, and email attachments. Zero-day exploits still need a delivery mechanism. Most of the time, someone has to click something to trigger the attack. The most dangerous zero-day in the world is far less effective against someone who doesn't click random links. Fourth, consider running Windows Defender, Microsoft's built-in antivirus, with cloud-based protection enabled. It's not perfect against truly novel zero days, but it catches known exploit patterns and suspicious behavior. And fifth, follow security researchers and outlets that cover zero-day disclosures. When a new unpatched vulnerability goes public, knowing about it quickly lets you adjust your behavior until a patch arrives. Here's what the headlines aren't telling you. Your biggest risk isn't the zero-day itself. It's the gap between discovery and patching. So let's bring this all together, because underneath a story about one banned GitHub account is something much larger and more important. The internet's security depends on a fragile ecosystem of independent researchers who find dangerous flaws and push companies to fix them. These researchers aren't paid employees. They don't have corporate lawyers or PR teams. Many of them work alone, driven by a mix of professional pride, intellectual curiosity, and a genuine belief that finding these problems before criminals do is important work. When the platform they rely on, controlled by the very company whose software they are researching, bans them for going public, it sends a message to every other researcher watching. And that message is, push us too hard, embarrass us publicly, and we will use every tool we have against you. Whether Microsoft's ban was legally justified, practically wise, or strategically sound is almost secondary to that signal. The security community's response has been rapid and furious, experts calling it vindictive, promises of further retaliation from the researcher, and a global conversation about platform power and free disclosure that shows no signs of slowing down. For the 1.4 billion Windows users in the world, the real takeaway is this. The people most likely to protect your computer from the next attack need the freedom to do their jobs without fear. When that freedom is threatened, it's not just one researcher who loses, it's all of us. Keep your Windows updated, pay attention to zero-day disclosures, and follow for daily AI and tech news, because stories like this are happening faster than ever, and someone needs to keep you informed.